Soyez les bienvenus à cette 21e rencontre d'enseignants de langue organisée par le Master en langue de l'Université pédagogique et technologique de Colombie, où l'on aura le plaisir de partager des différentes expériences en recherche des enseignants de langue. Cette année, notre sujet central se portera sur l'importance de léguer du pouvoir aux nouvelles générations et pratiques par le biais de la recherche et de l'éducation. On tient à vous remercier pour votre assistance et on espère que les discussions et sujets y traités enrichiront et contribueront énormément au processus d'enseignement-apprentissage de la recherche dans le domaine de la pédagogie et de la didactique des langues. Merci et profitons donc de cet excellent événement.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the 21st Teachers Moot and the 12th MA reunion. This is Professor Jonathan Vázquez Guarnizo speaking, and on behalf of the MA in Language Teaching from Universidad Pedagógica y Tecnológica de Colombia, our coordinator, Professor Berta Ramos Holguín, and the Teachers Moot Planning Committee, we really want to thank you all for being here with us. Right now, we're about to introduce our last keynote speakers, Professor Astrid Núñez Pardo and María Fernanda Telles from Universidad Externado de Colombia. But before that, I would like to remind everybody a couple of things. Number one, you can leave your comments or questions on the chat here on YouTube for our presenters. We will be more than glad to read them all out. Number two, you will also find a link on the chat where you can register your information, and in that sense, you can get your certification of attendance. And number three, at 3 p.m., when our last keynote speakers finish their presentations, we will be spread out in 5 different spaces, which we have named as mesas. Mesa número 1, mesa número 2, mesa número 3, mesa número 4, and mesa número 5. The links for each space will be also posted here on the chat, so you can easily access to the one that you prefer, as well as the link for our web page, where you can find the complete schedule for this event and who the presenters are in each space. Without further ado, it is my greatest honor to present 2 of the most powerful influences when it comes to material development in Colombia. Astrid Núñez Pardo, who is a professor and associate researcher in the master's program in education with emphasis on English didactics at Universidad Externado de Colombia. She holds a PhD in Education Sciences from Universidad Pedagógica y Tecnológica de Colombia, the UPTC, and an MA in Education, a specialization in International Economics, and a BA in Hotel and Tourist Business Management from Universidad Externado de Colombia. Additionally, she holds a diploma in Linguistic Studies from the University of Essex, UK, and in the Advanced International Program on Child Rights, Classroom and School Management from Lund University in Sweden. And María Fernanda Telles, who is also a professor and associate researcher in the master's program in education with emphasis on English didactics at Universidad Externado de Colombia. She is currently studying her PhD in Education Sciences at Universidad Pedagógica y Tecnológica de Colombia, the UPTC. She holds an MA in Education from Universidad Externado de Colombia and a BA in Modern Languages from Universidad de Los Andes. Additionally, she holds a diploma in the Advanced International Program on Child Rights, Classroom and School Management from Lund University in Sweden. Professors, thank you very much for having accepted this invitation. You both are such a great inspiration. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. We would first like to express our gratitude to the organizing committee for this kind invitation. Today, we are happy to share our experience in the research, in our pedagogical and research experience in the emphasis of English didactics at the master's program in education at the Universidad Externado de Colombia. So, welcome to our presentation, which we have entitled, just allow me to share my screen and let me know you've seen, if we have entitled, Deconstructing and Reconstructing in Doing Research on ELT Materials. from a superficial cultural to a critical intercultural perspective. Concerning the path that we have walked in our pedagogical and research experience, we have indeed moved from instrumental perspective of developing English language teaching materials to a more critical sociocultural and political viewpoint. In other words, after being part of the industrial and decontextualized development of EFL materials, including students' books and workbooks and teachers' guides, which we like calling doing more of the same, because basically we're replicating dominant ways of being and feeling, learning and understanding, and coexisting with others. But finally, we have gradually become aware of power forces that control and shape English teaching in all over the world, I would say. So we have also contributed to the development of other in-house materials that respond to the realities of the context where they are produced and implemented. For the previous reasons, we have recently proposed a macro research project in our emphasis that we have named Challenging Cultural, Political, and Knowledge Hegemony in EFL Education. Its main purpose is to make English teachers aware of power forces that govern ELT curriculum, shaping thereby ELT education, shaping thereby curriculum, materials, cultural representation, language teaching methodologies, learning strategies, type of learning activities, testing, bilingual policy, and also teaching practices. In short, those forces control everything regarding ELT education. The purpose of our talk is to let you know that we have been able to offer our English teachers an alternative way to develop or to generate ELT materials, that by empowering them to make decisions regarding the school curriculum, the materials, and the practices of pedagogical practices, teachers have become critical material developers, researchers, and generators of local knowledge. This knowledge we consider is pertinent and meaningful in students in their local context. Now I leave you with Marta.
Thank you, Astrid. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being present in our plenary. We have named this first moment Continuing Sameness in ELT Materials to Foster Language Skills, since we depart from a structural vision of the English language and conducted research centered on the contribution of teacher-developed materials and to enhancement of a student's language skills. Besides fostering the development of language skills, we have explored teachers' professional development and their sensitization towards child rights classroom practices. Among them, we explored the first one, a framework for materials development as a path for in-service teachers to build up the instructional design of their research projects. This framework maintained traditional ways of developing EFL materials informed by second language acquisition principles, mainly focusing on the development of language skills supported by foreign cultural content and imported teaching methodologies. Next, please. Our second research entitled Materials Development for Teacher Professional Growth revealed that encouraging teachers to create their own language teaching materials contributed to their personal and professional growth, since they explored an array of language teaching and learning theories and fostered students' self-selected content and learning strategies. Next, please. Another study entitled Teacher Developed Materials in a Master's Program in Education with emphasis on English Didactics evinced that the scaffolding process guided in-service teachers in the generation of their own contextualized materials. As a result, the three participating teachers gained the confidence and theoretical foundations to address the students' interests, and they were also able to demonstrate their creativity and were supported in the process of materials development through teachers and professors' feedback. Our fourth research, the argumentative competence through in-class debates, disclosed that the students developed their arguments supporting them with their own background knowledge, verbal and non-verbal language and life experiences. They constructed arguments with authority through examples and cause and effect relationships. Our fifth study, named Professional Development Seminars to Sensitize Teachers Towards Classroom Practices centered on child rights, showed the role of teachers as subjects of change in their pedagogical context. It uncovered that teachers value attending this seminar as it fostered professional development. It also allowed teachers for all subjects to know about change agents and projects that advocate children's rights and gave teachers insights about methodological activities implemented to solve situations where child rights are vulnerable or violated. All these studies were sponsored by the School of Education at Universidad Externado de Colombia and were conducted with in-service teachers of our emphasis on English didactics. Now, Professor Astrid, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marfa. So now we'll continue with our second moment. We have named this second moment Fostering a Change of Teachers' Minds to Embrace Diversity in ELT Curriculum, Materials, and Teaching Practices. So in an attempt to walk our talk and help teachers to become reflective and critical of the practices, curriculum, and materials, we have firmly held to three important notions in our emphasis on English didactics. The first notion is that we consider English teachers as reflective, critical, political, and transformative subjects who act as prospective educators of social justice and inclusion. So teachers become aware of their knowledge and capacity to generate materials. They go beyond teaching language features per se. They address the local concerns and problematic situations in their local context and denounce power dynamics and intervene them. The second notion, there is a sign that appeared there all the time, I don't know why. So the second notion is that we have come to understand material development as a reflective, theoretical, practical, culturally situated, constructive, and thus transformative academic endeavor that has been recently recognized by language pedagogy and applied linguistics as an ample field of knowledge domain. So let's say that we can conduct research on developing materials, using or exploiting materials, analyzing materials, evaluating materials, selecting them, or doing critical analysis. So we also consider that the field of study of material development entails theoretical foundations, creative skills, and critical perspectives of EFL teachers that render context-sensitive teacher-generated or produced creative materials. The third aspect is that EFL materials, or notion that we consider that EFL materials or ELT materials are powerful sociocultural, pedagogical, cognitive, and didactic mediations. So we don't think that the materials are simply means or artifacts or mediators or tools. On the contrary, being sociocultural, didactic, pedagogical, and cognitive mediations, they foster language learning. That is true. But they also have the potential to raise sociocultural awareness in both students and teachers in the local context. Those resources or those mediations also enable intercultural exchanges and education of the students as autonomous and self-reliant cultural and interculturally aware individuals. So let's say that they are powerful resources or powerful mediations. Then this critical perspective of generating ELT materials is consistent with the previous perspectives of teachers, the field of materials development, and materials as such or per se. I couldn't, or we couldn't forget to mention that conducting research in the doctoral program in education at the Universidad Pedagógica Tecnológica de Colombia, UPTC, has enabled a complete transformation of our view of English language teaching. So let's say that conducting research in the doctoral program has also influenced our vision of ELT materials, curriculum, teaching practices, testing, and language policy. So by doing research in this program, so we endorsed a critical, sociocultural, political, and thus diverse and inclusive vision of ELT in general. So the alternative way of conceiving other desirable, contextualized, and thus decolonized ELT materials or language materials, proposing our emphasis, is grounded on critical interculturality and inspired by the decolonial turn and critical literacy. All those components are pertinent in helping students not only learn a language, but become the citizens that our country needs. So those that are really that self-confident, that are critical, and that are sensitive to cultural differences and commonalities. The decolonized approach to orient the development of other contextualized materials implies three triads of criteria: a triad of ontological criteria, a triad of epistemological criteria, and a triad of power criteria. So we're going to see that the triad of ontological criteria suggests that student life experiences regarding deep culture of human beings should be the content of those contextualized materials in permanent dialogue with other experiences of the cultural universe, and the content should be presented in multimodal tests of diverse genres. Because if we don't include the diversity of tests that our students are reading today, they will just depending on the written, let's say, written way of presenting a test. So then they should be also of diverse genres, because usually in commercial EFL textbooks we find descriptive narrative, descriptive paragraph, or narratives. So we need to include argumentative text there to be able to generate controversy, discussion, and elaboration of arguments. The second criterion suggests that student life projects as unique subjects within their own context, with capacities and particular ways of being, feeling, dreaming, doing, acting, and inhabiting, construct shared visions to generate other possible worlds. So addressing student life projects and the materials that we design for our classes is an important aspect, so they can also gain sense of belonging in their communities. The third criterion refers to iconography. So it is suggested that the iconography of the subject in the urban, rural, school, family, or community context should appear there, because the iconography foster allows for inclusion, recognition, identity, cohesion, and generational bonds. The triad of epistemological criteria suggests that empowering teachers and students to make curricular and materials decisions is important because they are the subjects involved in the educational act or in the teaching and learning process of a language in this case. So learning activities, the second one suggests that learning activities should include or should consider higher order thinking skills, so involve interpreting, comparing, contrasting, discerning, reflecting, discussing and transforming human realities, and also being supported by the conscious use of learning strategies and a critical use of the technological resources. Because what usually happens in commercially oriented or generic and decontextualized and meaningful materials is that they do continue insisting on those low thinking skills. And then the learning strategies proposed are the less complex. And we need to expose students to those, yes, less complex reading learning skills, but gradually moving them to the more complex. So we are directing them towards the development of critical thinking skills. And also the use of technological resources with a real purpose, communicative purpose, or sharing vital information or pertinent or meaningful information. And the third epistemological criterion suggests that the generation of context-sensitive methodology responds to the local reality where English is taught and learned with other contextualized and desirable materials, and with the others to foster meaningful and reflective and constructive learning settings. These context-sensitive methodologies are proposed by English teachers, and they underpin the materials they develop for the pedagogical interventions in their studies. Finally, the triad of power criteria. So the first criterion suggests that educational policy should be discussed, should be agreed, and should be discussed collectively and should be agreed with the subject directly involved in the learning and teaching process, so teachers and students. Usually they are never called when the language policy is decided. So then the invitation is to appropriate language policy in our institutions. So we can decide on the type of curriculum, we can decide on the type of context-sensitive methodologies, and we can also decide on the type of materials and testing. The second criteria refers to the creation of other contextualized materials by teachers and students as citizens who are with social awareness, and it contributes to the struggle towards a critical and democratic freedom-based education. So in short, our material should educate students. We are not teaching just language, but we are also educating them for life. So the third power criterion, which is the one that I think is possible in many schools, is the institutionalization of other contextualized and decolorized materials that support teachers and students' sense of belonging, commitment, and personal and professional growth. In the samples we are going to share here, you will see that a couple of pedagogical interventions were institutionalized. So let's say that the directors, the principals, or the coordinators agreed to have them published for not only for the group that was using them in the pedagogical intervention, with the implementation of the pedagogical intervention, but the rest of the groups that were doing, or studying English in schools. That is an effort that we should applaud, because it implies that others are seeing this role of our English teachers as local knowledge producers, because they are, as I said before, because we consider them as knowledgeable, as critical, and also as subjects able to generate knowledge. So this is an effort that we should highlight and also visualize, because for many years perhaps many English teachers have developed materials, but nobody talks about that. So we need to make visible that activity because through the development of materials, we can also learn to teach a language. We can also help others to learn the language. But more than that, we can help them become individuals that are socioculturally aware. These desirable, contextualized, and decolonized materials have the potential to build students and teachers critical sociocultural awareness in local, urban, and rural communities, and local, urban, and rural community change and transformation. Let's say that the activities proposed there imply helping students transform or change those harsh or complex realities, so they are not condemned to live for life with that problematic situation or hard situation. This decolonized perspective of developing ELT material has shaped our teacher beliefs regarding their self, their knowledges, and the adapting ways of developing localized ELT materials. As you can observe on the screen, there are two booklets that were, one is a module and the other is a booklet. Those two were institutionalized. So then, as I said, that we have somehow permeated or shaped the way teachers think or believe. So then we recently felt the need to explore teacher beliefs about alternative ways of developing ELT materials. So then, as you can see on the left-hand side, we're working on the 7th research book entitled Disrupting Teacher Beliefs on Mainstream Ways of Developing ELT Materials. And our study is entitled Exploring Teacher Beliefs about Alternative Ways of Developing ELT Materials. So teacher beliefs about themselves and knowledges, for instance, contextual, experiential, critical, empirical, pedagogical content, and content knowledges, uncover other ways of developing localized ELT materials that unsettle their decontextualized, standardized, and meaningless production. So ELT materials underpinned by contextualized teaching methodologies promote students and teachers sociocultural awareness, local community change, and also the generation of local knowledge, which we consider pertinent and valid. Now I leave you with Marta.
Our third moment is unsettling teachers' superficial view of culture. In congruency with three essential notions in our emphasis that were previously referred to, we have awakened English teachers' consciousness of visible, congratulatory, and aspirational hegemonic culture, or culture with big C, that first overlooks, conceals, and marginalizes cultural diversity. Second, this global vision of culture privileges superficial cultural representations like festivals, folklore, food, and facts, which are named the 4F by Cramsch. They entail tourist landmarks, architectural heritage, gastronomy, festivals, and national dances, and the like. We have also noticed that in commercially oriented textbooks, superficial culture is privileged in detriment of a student's complex experiential culture. The students' life experiences regard complex and multifaceted ways of being, living, and coexisting that imply diverse values, behaviors, beliefs, and perceptions of gender identity, ethnic diversity, social class, sexual orientation, diverse capacities and ways of learning, understanding, and living with others. This complex diversity of students' lives questions and challenges conservative and static perspectives of culture, which are not always accepted as they do not fit cultural standards. Therefore, our emphasis is giving English teachers the knowledge to disrupt the superficial view of culture, as it maintains a hegemonic view by worshipping foreign places and people's ways of being, thinking, and acting. Therefore, we agree with Kumaradivelu when he stated that teachers need to produce knowledge more systematically and for a larger purpose. This endeavor led us to critically analyze the cultural content and activities in teacher-generated EFL materials to identify the resistance to cultural hegemony. We carry out a documentary research to critically analyze and trace the cultural component in teacher-generated EFL materials. The findings revealed the emergence of deep culture issues in teacher-generated materials, which was possible through reflection on students' values, beliefs, and behaviors for transformation and improvement of self-concept. Deep culture was also addressed through students' inquiry skills, such as observation, prediction, interpretation, and communication for problem solving. Finally, inferential reading was promoted through local places and news. Then we would like to highlight that our English teachers are now creating materials and classes that are culturally appropriate. Now, I invite Professor Astrid to continue.
Thank you, ma'am. So, empowering in-service teachers as critical researchers and material developers is our fourth moment. So far, we have identified 4 different moments in order to guide teachers into the development of ELT material from a critical perspective. So pay attention to the word empowering in-service teachers as critical researchers and material developers, because the problem is that sometimes teachers do a lot in terms of materials. They design activities, they design exercises, but they continue being developed or designed from an uncritical point of view. So then we're going to begin that we have worked and raised students, teachers' awareness of the instrumental and mechanical vision of the English language derived from those power forces that control ELT in general. Besides that, education policy, literature, including the EFL textbooks and programs in educational institutions, have replicated and naturalized the idea of a universal source of knowledge, culture, and policy. So this unique source of knowledge, culture, and policy renders the contextualized, standardized, generic, and meaningless English curriculum materials and thus teaching practices. Then all these aspects limit the construction of local knowledge by local teachers, researchers, and scholars in our local context. We have further acknowledged that the global English textbook responds to capitalist, globalized, and neoliberal narratives that associate English with exploitation, productivity, success, and individualism. So all those narratives influence or shape the way individuals, and in particular teachers and students, behave. Let's say that neoliberal narrative enslave human beings to consumerism at a global scale. So it prevents cultural, social, and pedagogical values while regularizing misery, discrimination, and injustice. So in other words, this narrative condemns English teachers to be naive consumers of knowledge instead of being producers of local knowledge. Our invitation and our emphasis is to have English teachers doing research that imply analyzing, evaluating, creating, exploiting materials, or making sense of any other complex reality, that we insist on generating local knowledge. We have also advocated English teachers' construction of a critical thought and discourse to resist knowledge, culture, and policy hegemony in education. Teachers have proposed pedagogical interventions that imply the creation of their own online or printed ELT materials, such as workshop or sheet learning activities, even modules or booklets. Then teachers and students resist and struggle for a more just society by transforming weaknesses into strength and despair into well-being as they are educating students for life. So the idea is that we are helping students to visualize a better future, a better way of living, especially having them, educating them as critical citizens. Now we have a sample of the ELT material that have been developed by our students and our English teachers and their students for the pedagogical interventions. There is a large variety of materials. Some of them are printed online and printed. Some of them are printed. And you will see the variety of things that they approach. The first one here is that this localized workshop deals with teen pregnancy in a public school to raise students' sexual responsibility and awareness of birth control methods. The teacher, Mauricio Tapias Cadena, invited students to share their life experiences. So the stories of the students were used there as the content of the materials. So one of the surprising results was that after the implementation of this pedagogical intervention in that public school, teen pregnancy rates were reduced to 0% the year that those materials were implemented. Marfa?
These workshops that address superficial culture, festivities, costumes, folklore, and typical food aimed at increasing her students' cultural awareness of their own local culture. The student was Cyprian, 2018.
Thank you. This teacher developed e-learning platform with digital contextualized workshops on students' dilemmas to foster student writing skills. Was developed by Diaz, I forgot her name now, sorry. So this teacher created an e-learning platform and it comprised contextualized workshops based on flipped short stories about personal and social conflicts to foster third graders composition writing and motivation in an EFL classroom at the private bilingual education program, where they basically educate students from public institutions. All the stories, the short stories, were created by Suli Diaz, the teacher that was in charge of these classes.
The next materials developed by another student called Fernandez Legro, 2018, mentioned reading or address local cultural aspects like historical places and local news. These materials aim at making inferences or reading between and behind the lines, taking students away from literal reading and grammar and lexical aspects.
Thank you. So this teacher design workshop, designed by Jose Oliveros, fosters students' critical points of view to alleviate or solve problems related to bullying by associating the content of hip-hop songs selected by the students. The activities center on critical thinking skills that encourage students to find themselves as social transformers. The teacher used, again, the life experiences of his students, what they have faced in terms of bullying, to build the content of the materials. And the learning activities he proposed were all oriented toward developing higher order thinking skills.
This workshop focused on environmental issues to enhance students' critical reading skills and generate an impact towards social transformation in a particular local context. And the materials were developed by Diaz Beltran 2021.
This context-sensitive, teacher-created printed workshop considered deep cultural issues like students' self-love, self-care, and sexual responsibility to foster the social awareness and oral communication. So the teacher used her students' lived experiences as content of the materials. She also interviewed the school counselor and the former student who had recovered from drug consumption about the gardener of the school. And she was Nelly Correa Marciales.
Could you
Yes,
please,
yes.
Astrid, click
Yes.
on
Just
the
a
next
second,
one?
please.
Thank you very much. This workshop is a contextualized reading workshop focused on several text genres such as short stories, moral dilemmas, storyboards, interviews, and so on. Thank you, Astrid.
Now we have this institutionalized context-bound module made up of 2 workshops focused on teacher-composed and adapted songs to foster vocabulary learning in students enrolled in the Friendly Town program in Cajicá, Cundinamarca, Jeffer Álvarez Forero. This was one of the modules that was institutionalized, in Friendly Town, and those materials were rich in creativity and cultural content. So the teacher performed the role of a language teacher, researcher, material developer, and also singer, interpreter, and composer. So he was playing quite a large number of roles in this pedagogical intervention.
This teacher developed worksheets that were underpinned by the inquiry process. This is OPIC, and it mentions or highlights several aspects such as exploration, inquiry, identification of skills, and so on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Okay, here we have this online decolonized EFL material that challenged 4 related words and actions on race, gender, and social class. They were developed by Aida Aguirre Arbeláez. As you can see, there is rich content in terms of interculturality and intercultural awareness, in particular, ontological aspects related to race, gender, and social issues. She was also resorting to, let's say, technology, using technology critically in order to help the students expressing their voices and discussing these aspects. These online decolonized EFL materials challenge 4 greater words and actions related to race, gender, and social class issues. And here we have, for example, this worksheet, because this was a private setting, understanding other ways of being. And as you can see in the second part of this lesson, she included a passage about our mayor, and also Brigitte Baptiste. So just to have the students saying gender, identity, and sexual orientation and diversity. Marfa, I think it's yours now.
This institutionalized context-bound booklet based on environmental issues aimed at helping 8th graders learn vocabulary and environmental awareness in a public school. This workshop was developed by Gomez Villamarin 2020. And And there you can see the variety of activities in this first part that you have the unit getting familiar with my environment.
Okay, thank you. And now we have these online teacher-generated reading worksheets focused on multimodal critical literacy tests aimed at strengthening 4 grades critical reading in a private school. They were developed by Lendi Vanessa Valencia Tuay. So she interviewed one of the cleaners of the school and also asked students to please narrate their stories regarding eating habits and how the students read passages that had a controversial tone in order to develop critical reading. Papa?
The next workshop, I think it is this decolonized digital teacher generated, they are worksheets on social issues for students' critical thinking drew on realities. They live in their local context. The thought-provoking learning activities encourage students to assume a critical stance. As you can see on the screen.
They were developed by Diego Bastidas. So now we have these materials that included contextualized tests and audio track written and recorded by the teacher and other colleagues. He also fostered the critical use of learning strategies and technological tools to motivate the students' activity completion. Finally, we have print and online worksheet on potential challenges of tourism in Colombia. They consider complex human beliefs, perceptions, and behaviors that put at risk ecotourism in Colombia, enabling students and the teacher to transform themselves as critical individuals with the capacity and potential to rethink the sociocultural context. The teacher used the free graphic design platform Canva. So Diego Bastida designed these worksheets, and Sergio Pardo, designed the previous one, okay, about police brutality. We made a mistake there with the name. Sergio Pardo, I'm sorry. So I would like to finish with this quote: English teachers as knowledge generators can dismantle the hegemony of a unique discourse to make room for reflection, transformation, and the construction of alternative knowledge. Thank you very much, and we have some minutes for questions in case you would like to ask any. Thank you. Let's see if you have any comments or any questions that we can answer. We still have like 10 minutes in case you have any doubt.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we were just looking at some of the comments. So thank you again for that wonderful presentation. I think that you all know that we admire you greatly. Actually, Professor Carolina was talking about how much she admired you this morning as well. So just wanted to read some of the comments we're receiving from Maria Teresa Esteban that says, thank you, dear professors. Hans Ovieda, who says, buenas tardes para todos. Saludos desde Florencia, Caquetá. Un abrazo para mi querida asesora Astrid Núñez Pardo. And there was another message from Professor Carolina Rodriguez Buitrago, who was with us this morning, and she said that it was such an honor to listen to you as well.
Thank you. Okay,
and let me check for some more comments.
We're ready to answer, or
so we do have another comment from Annie Rayon that says, thank you, Dr. Núñez and Professor Tellez, for your presentation. It has been a wonderful and educational experience. Thank you so much for all of your effort. Professor Jairo Castañeda is also with us today, and he says, thank you, dear Astrid and Mafe, very inspiring. You have worked very hard and the results are evident in your students. We have a comment. A lot of thank you messages. No questions yet, so I'll keep reading the comment. Diana Campos says, thanks for this clear information. Maria Teresa Esteban says, thank you for sharing with us those relevant ideas about teachers as active agents of change. It is mandatory to state a critical position in front of language teaching. So I guess since we have some time, I will pose a question for the both of you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
Yes, and it is this one. Do you think that we are doing enough in our language programs to decolonize this material? And if so, how? And if not, how could we improve in this aspect?
Well, thank you for the question. I think that when regarding coloniality and decolonizing teachers' mindsets, and also decolonizing ELT education in general, it takes time. Of course, sometimes you feel that you are doing isolated efforts, but I think that we should always try, never stop. The only way to transform our realities is by making an attempt, and we need to dream to cause a change. So let's say that we cannot transform reality from night to morning, but we can gradually start shaping those English teachers' mindsets or perceptions regarding ELT education. So let's say that in many English programs now, critical subjects or critical vision of ELT is being reviewed, and thank God, because it is educating critical researchers and language teachers. However, since we've been colonized for so long, because we didn't have that so-called independence, okay? Because we continue being, let's say, now controlled by other people, los criollos. So they wanted the Spanish people to live, but to have other people, let's say, colonizing us again. So we breathe coloniality every day. So let's say that English programs have started to work on this critical perception of educating or helping students learn a foreign language. How to proceed? Well, in our case, what we have done so far is to propose the colonial criteria for materials. Dr. Carlo Granados has proposed a criteria for epistemological criteria for initial education. So do you see? So we need perhaps somebody that continues proposing other criteria in order to have policy appropriation of language policy, perhaps. So then it is important to continue to keep going in this task of decolonizing everything. We need to decolonize language teaching methodologies. We need to decolonize English teacher mindset. We need to decolonize curriculum. We need to be disobedient. So the mode should be to question everything, to doubt everything, because we are intelligent enough, we are creative enough, we are critical enough so as to propose our own, let's say, language policy, our own curriculum, our own materials. Usually, ministerial institutions impose, suggested, the so-called suggested curriculum is not suggested, it is indeed imposed. But it also depends on the perception of the principal of the school, because if the principal doesn't know what is entailed in learning a foreign language, so that person is going to say, let's apply, let's say, strictly. But if the principal knows what is entailed in learning and teaching a foreign language, perhaps he's going to give teachers the freedom and the authority to do what they think is the correct thing to do, which is to propose from our own realities. If we don't contextualize ELT education, I think we're not doing anything at all, because we are sick and tired of reproducing dominant Western North knowledges and replicating them, naturalizing them, legitimizing them. So how about our knowledges? Okay, we are very rich in many aspects, and sometimes other people come here to exploit them. So we need to wake up and start producing at all levels. We have, fortunately, we have research in different aspects, and there is a tendency to disrupt coloniality in ELT. Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Wonderful answer. And something that really connects with what we've been talking about in the morning, because Professor Dario Vanegas, he was talking about social justice in the classroom and diversity. And then we saw some topics that were related to resisting. And from Dr. Cindy Cruz, she said we are resisting, and she puts it in ing because we are in that continuous process. And now that you mentioned question everything, I absolutely love that.
Yes, and excuse me for interrupting. Now that you say resisting is not enough, because I can complain, I can resist, but I need to act. So acting, doing something, that is the correct way, because I can just question and doubt everything and resist. Yes, I don't want to use these materials, I don't want to follow this curriculum, I don't want to do whatever. So, but what are you proposing? So then when we criticize, when we resist, then we are supposed to propose. So then when we propose, we become producers, generators of knowledge. And I think that our students and our English teachers have done absolutely wonderful developments of interesting and meaningful materials that their students have valued as meaningful and pertinent for the education.
Well, we have time for one last question. Really would love to hear your reflections. This one comes from Finn Ale, who says, if you could please talk about the importance of creating spaces for talking about gender in the BA and MA program.
Okay, yes, very important. Gender identity, sexual orientation, social class, diverse capacity, all those ontological aspects are omitted. Incredible, are omitted in materials, omitted in curriculum, and omitted in class discussions. I would say that is a very pertinent issue to consider in our classes, not only in classes for soon-to-be teachers or future teachers, but also for our students in primary, secondary, and university context. It is important for all of us, especially because in our urban and even perhaps more in the urban context, let's say that there is a tendency to marginalize or to single out, okay, people with diverse gender identities. So to me, gender is a very important ontological aspect that you should be reviewed, that should be discussed, and that should be looked into. We should conduct research on that, because even in our classes, let's say that the teachers, the English teachers, they are gender-wise in many issues. For instance, if you are in a class with children, with girls and boys, then the teacher, the female teacher say, okay, girls, let's organize the classroom. So why is it? So all of you should do, girls and boys. So then the same teachers are also, unfortunately, let's say, maintaining that gender-biased treatment or gender-biased actions or whatever, perceptions of the roles of students, of female or male. So then the same happens with sexual orientation. That is a taboo topic that we should address in our classes. You know, when you give students confidence, when you give students the opportunity to narrate their personal stories, they do it, and everybody learns to listen with respect and to understand that we are all different. And in the richness is in diversity. Imagine if we were all equal, how dull, how boring. So then we need to start to learn to respect diversity in gender identity, and also sexual orientation, and even ethnic diversity, which is another issue that we should contemplate in materials, as we showed in these samples from AIDA. Thank you, Anna. I don't know if I have answered your question well. Or...
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Astrid Nunez, for being with us today. Professor Maria Fernanda Telles, thank you so much. You have always been a very special guest at the Teachers Moot, and it's so nice to have seen you again at this one.
Thank you.
And we hope
Thank
that
you
can
very
join
much.
us. Yes, next year, hopefully in person. That would be amazing.
Yes,
And
you know that we are just finishing our study exploring teacher beliefs. And it is amazing the way teacher beliefs or perceptions change after going through our seminars in research, English didactics, that is composed of material development, critical pedagogies and assessment, and then the research seminar that they attend. So I would say that they, as individuals and as English teachers, they are transformed, and also the teaching practices and resources.
okay, well, thank you very much.
And you're
And
welcome,
now
thank
the
you again.
invitation.
Thank you,
Yes,
Anna.
the invitation is for all of our audience to please join us in the concurrent sessions. We have been sending our Teachers Moot webpage. There you will find different tabs. If you click on concurrent sessions, it sends you to Mesa 1, Mesa 2, Mesa 3, 4, y 5. You can click on all of the images and they will open all of the Google Meets. So let's continue the conversation in the concurrent sessions. And for now, we will close this YouTube link. So we'll see you there. Bye.
Bye, thank you.